At long last, we are finally back to turning left exclusively for this weekend in NASCAR DFS as the NASCAR Cup Series going to Michigan for the FireKeepers Casino 400. That is this weekend, the first oval race in about a month since before the Olympics. So it's been a hot second, which means we have to go back to our basics with ovals and try to decide how to play things for DFS. I think the good thing is that the starting order for this week aligns perfectly with our optimal strategy for this week so we can get set and dive on in and let you know who we feel best about for DFS. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Sunday's FireKeepers Casino 400. Lock is at 3 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, and the lineup has already been set. The starting order has been set, so as we go along for today, you can feel free to fill out lineups and get those entered before Sunday's race. So plenty of time to do so for right now. Before we dive in, though, quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcast, because this weekend we have MLB for Friday. We have UFC for this weekend via Austin Swaim. I've got NASCAR right now and plenty more to come next week as well. NFL just around the corner. So make sure you search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcast. Hit subscribe. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Hey, sports fans, FanDuel is offering an exclusive promotion for new sportsbook users. Join FanDuel Sportsbook today and make your first bet. If you lose, we'll give you a refund up to $1,000 in site credit within 72 hours. Your first bet after depositing will qualify if you have multiple selections on one bet slip. It will be the first selection you made. Head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today and place your first bet. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. New users only. Max bonus $1,000 site credit. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's take a look at the track breakdown here for the FireKeepers Casino 400. And again, we are back on an oval for the first time in about a month. And there are just 200 laps in this race, which is shorter than a lot of other oval races, but it's still more than double what we've had the past 2 weeks at Watkins Glen and then at Indy. So it's going to be a very different construction the past 2 weeks. And despite the fact that it's not as long as a lot of oval races, we do still need at least one lap leader in each lineup. That is because this is a track where you see a lot of drivers dominate the race. You see a driver jump out, lead a bunch of laps, and rack up those lap lead points on FanDuel.com. They have had 4 races at this track since switching to the 550 horsepower package. And the intention of that package was to keep the pack closer, try to generate some pack racing and stuff like that. And we've seen that at times for sure. But we've still seen one driver lead at least half the laps in 3 of the 4 races at Michigan. In one of those races, Joey Logano started in the pole, blocked all day long, led 163 laps, and won that race. He did not have the fastest car that day, but he was still able to keep that car out front, lead laps, and win that day. And we could very well see someone get the 10 bonus points for laps led. That's 100 laps led. That's half the race. I think the odds of that happening are very high this weekend. And as a result of that, you do want a lap leader in each lineup. Luckily for us, it's not too hard to determine who that guy will be. Kyle Larson is starting on the pole this weekend. He is the most likely winner in my simulations for good reason. He could absolutely mop up during this race. So obviously, with Larson being on the pole, there is no place differential upside. But it doesn't matter because he's still fully viable here. There are more than enough laps to justify it. The next 3 most likely winners are Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, and Denny Hamlin. They're also all starting inside the top 10. So what I would do is get one of those drivers up front who you think can win this race, someone you think can dominate, lead a bunch of laps, and plug that driver into each lineup. Get one of those guys in each lineup to make sure you have the potential dominator on your roster. Your second guy, your second stud, that's where you can get some place differential. but you've got some leeway here. You could go with the second guy up front, try to get 2 lap leaders, but you can also get some place differential for your second stud. In last year's doubleheader, the second race, Kevin Harvick started 20th, and because he won the first race, he still led more than half the laps and won the race. So if you're fast, you can make up ground here. Passing the leader is tough. Making passes in general is fine if you're fast enough to do so. And we have some guys starting deeper in the field who could realistically win this race. We got William Byron and Brad Keselowski. They're starting right in the middle of the field. They rank 5th and 6th in my win sims, respectively. You can easily pair those guys with Larson, get the laps led potential from Larson, the place differential upside from those guys, and feel good about your lineup. Those place differential guys are very viable for this week, but they're also more the exception than the norm. We're likely going to have to be okay using some value plays starting closer to the front, because for the most part, outside of the Byrons, Keselowskis, and Logano's, most of the good drivers here are starting towards the front of the pack. Of the top 20 drivers in my model for this race, only 3 drivers are starting outside the top 20. None of them are starting lower than 28th. So we do have some place differential guys, like Christopher Bell's back there further, Austin Dillon's back there, but it's a very different outlook than we've had recently with the road courses. We're going to have more of a front-centric approach than we've had the past couple of weeks. That's true for both the studs and for the value plays, because we do want to get a lap leader up front, and then for the value plays, more so out of necessity than how you want to play things in general, we're going to be forced to go towards guys at the front just because we need speed. And that's kind of the overall takeaway here, is you need to make sure your drivers have speed. It doesn't matter where they start. They got to be fast, because Michigan is the fastest track on the schedule. If you don't have speed, you're not going to finish well. If you don't finish well, you're not going to score well for DFS. I think the best way to judge speed this week is just by looking at all the races in the 550 horsepower package in a blender, basically. We've got 8 races in this package on non-drafting tracks thus far. Those races are 2 in Pocono. That's likely our closest parallel because it's 2.5 miles. Michigan is 2 miles. A lot of speed required in Pocono, too. All the others in the sample are 1.5 miles. Plus, there's low tire wear at Pocono, which is similar to Michigan. After that, I would look at the tracks with the lower tire wear that were the 1.5 mile tracks. So that's Charlotte and that's Las Vegas. After that, I put the 1.5 mile tracks with more tire wear in one bucket. That is the 2 Atlanta races, Kansas and Homestead. So I do want to blend them all together, get a picture of raw speed, because that matters a lot. At Michigan, we do want to find the fastest drivers, but I would put extra emphasis on Pocono, followed by Charlotte and Vegas, and then the rest in there as well. So to recap, our strategy for the Sunday race in Michigan, get a lap leader at the front who you think can dominate the race. And again, the starting order does set up well for that, with the 4 most likely winners all starting inside the top 9 spots. Feel free to have your second stud start further back. We got options there with Byron, Keselowski, and Logano, but don't feel forced to use one of those 3 guys. There are enough laps here to justify having 2 guys towards the front. Denny Hamlin starting 9th is a fully fine second stud. So feel free to defer the back with your second stud, but you don't need to necessarily. I will probably have to feel okay using some value play starting closer to the front. It's not the most comfortable feeling, but I do think it'll be necessary for this week. Just get fast cars, regardless of where those cars are starting, and lean on Pocono to judge who will be those fast cars this week. Then Charlotte, then Vegas, but just in general, overall, you want raw speed in the 550 horsepower package. That's the best signal we will get for this race. If you do all that, you should have a good start here on identifying fast cars, identifying who can make up ground, identifying who can finish well after running towards the front, and who can score well for DFS. And because the starting order is set, we can go through the tier-by-tier breakdown and let you know my favorite drivers for Sunday's race. Let's do that right now. Starting off with the elite tier, that is Kyle Larson at $14,500 on FanDuel through Chase Elliott at $12,500. And Larson is the top guy here by a decent chunk. He leads my model in projected average running position by more than a full position. That is stupid. Like, that is outrageous how much better Larson is than everyone else in my model. And he gets there thanks to both his current form, which you know of, but also his track history, because Larson won here 3 times when he was at Chip Ganassi Racing. That was when he was in, I would say, mid-tier equipment. Now he has the fastest car in NASCAR. He's starting in the pole. He has 20% win odds in my simulations, and personally, I'd go above that as well. And he can pay off without winning thanks to his domination potential to lead laps and run out front a bunch. So I think that Larson is the top guy in this field by a margin, no question. Kyle Larson, number one for sure. Among the other guys in this tier, give me Kyle Busch for sure in second. He has been tremendous in the 550 horsepower package so far this year. Busch, in 8 races, has 6 podium finishes. That includes 5 in a row. He has won twice. He won one Pocono race, and he was second in the other. He and Larson are the class of the field in this package right now. So I'm going to treat them as such. And, I think there will be times where I go with the two Kyles, stacking Kyles in the same lineup, Larson and Busch. There are some value plays I do like. So that's fine. But I'm also okay dipping down for that second person and just going with Larson by himself or Busch by himself and then going more balanced than there. So this tier to me is ranked Larson 1, Busch 2, Chase Elliott 3, and then Martin Truex Jr. number 4. The second tier on FanDuel is Kevin Harvick at $12,000, through Alex Bowman at $10,000. And this is where the place differential options are that I alluded to before. We'll talk about them first and then talk about why I like Denny Hamlin at 11.5. The guys starting further back are William Byron, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano. I'm going to rank them in that exact order. Byron 1, Keselowski 2, Logano 3. Byron has a win on a 550 track already this year. That was back in Homestead. He had a podium finish back in Pocono. He ranks 5th in win odds in my simulations, as mentioned, and will start 18th. You love that for DFS, and I think that Byron is a play for cash games, potentially the play for cash games for this week. Keselowski ranks 2nd. He has the edge over Logano for sure in this package. He also, like Larson, like Byron, had a podium finish in Pocono. He had really strong runs in Vegas and Kansas, and Vegas is a low tire wear track, low tire fall-off track, so that's impactful there. Keselowski, $10,300, starting back in 20th. So I think that Keselowski, number 2. Logano just hasn't had as much upside as those two guys. He's starting 19th, $10,500, so I'm kind of obligated to consider him. But Logano hasn't had upside in this package. So to me, those guys are ranked Byron and Keselowski 1, 2, and a tier by their own. And then Logano's a tier back among the place differential guys. I do want to get some Hamlin closer to the front, though. He has not won yet this year, but he's had speed in this package. He has 3 fourth-place finishes. He's been pretty strong at this track, specifically in the past. He's starting in 9th, so a little bit of place differential juice with Hamlin as well. Not as much as with Byron and Keselowski, but there is still some there as well. And I don't want to gloss over him. So I'm going to rank this tier Byron 1, Keselowski 2, Hamlin 3 above Logano. So even though Logano's starting deeper, I like Hamlin's win potential more. So Byron, Keselowski, Hamlin, Logano, Harvick, and then Bowman. Harvick has tremendous history at this track. He's won 3 straight races here, but his form in this package is what I care more about, and it's too underwhelming for me to rank him above the others. So I'm okay being underweight on Harvick for this week under the assumption people will go there as a result of the track history. The mid-range is Ryan Blaney at $9,500 through Ross Chastain at $8,000. And Christopher Bell is starting deeper in the pack. I think he's fine. That's intentionally phrased that way. He hasn't been as stout in the 550 horsepower package this year. He has only 2 top 10 finishes in 8 races. And part of that is due to variance because he's had a couple races where he's had a good average running position but didn't finish well. And that's why my model likes him, because it operates more based on the peripherals and the finishes. So that's why it does view Bell pretty favorably. And I do like him. I just don't love him. So I think Bell is a good cash game play. But for tournaments, I am willing to pivot. I think that a good pivot off of Bell for tournaments is Tyler Reddick. He's starting back in 14th. So he's not nearly as big of a place differential guy as Bell is, but I love his finishing upside. Reddick has 5 top 10s in 8 races in this package. He was 11th in another. He had a 2nd place finish in Homestead. We saw Reddick have an 8th place average running position in Charlotte, which is a low wear track as well. So I think that it's realistic to expect Tyler Reddick to contend for a top 5 finish here this weekend. If you get that at $8,500, it doesn't matter where he starts. It's not like he's starting like 3rd, he's starting 14th. So I think that if I had a single entry tournament lineup, I would go Reddick over Bell for this weekend. That might be contrarian. I hope it is, but I think that that is the way to play things for this week. Bell for cash games, and then going with Reddick for tournaments. I'm also likely to be underweight on Ross Chastain. Starting back in 22nd, he has not been very good in this package, just underwhelming, I would say, across the board. So I'll rank this tier Bell 1 straight up, then Reddick, but Reddick again higher for single entry tournaments, Kurt Busch 3, Ryan Blaney 4, and then Ross Chastain number 5. The value tier is Austin Dillon at $7,500 or Chris Buescher at $5,700. And Austin Dillon's another guy who could be a cash game consideration, probably pretty close to a lock, I would say, for me in cash games. He's starting 26th, that's $7,500, and he should have good speed here because Dillon had good runs in Charlotte, Kansas, and Pocono. 2 of those are low wear tracks. He's also shown speed on this track type in the past. RCR tends to have good speed on the really big tracks. And Dillon is a good source of finishing potential and some place differential at a low salary at $7,500. So Austin Dillon, to me, cash game consideration and a very good tournament play as well. For tournaments, I'm also pretty interested in Bubba Wallace. He's starting 15th at $6,500, and we've seen him improve a lot at the 550 tracks recently. He had a top 15 average running position in Charlotte, both Pocono races, and Atlanta. He had some good speed in Michigan last year, has also run well in Indianapolis on the oval, which is more similar to Michigan than a lot of other tracks. So I think he knows how to run these tracks pretty well, should have good speed via 2311 Racing. So I am not opposed to Bubba Wallace, but would rank him a good chunk behind Dillon. This tier to me is Dillon 1, Wallace 2, Daniel Suarez 3, starting back in 30th. Hasn't had the best speed in this package, but starting 30th, super low salary at $6,000. So I'll still get there, but the performance is a bit more concerning. And then Eric Almirola, number 4 in this tier for me. The punting tier is Chase Briscoe at $5,500 on down. There are some interesting guys here, and one who I think is my favorite is Michael McDowell. He is $4,000 and starting 25th. We saw McDowell have good runs in both the Pocono races, and he's had a top 20 finish in all but one race in this package so far this year. So yeah, the upside is limited, but he's $4,000 starting 25th. If you get a top 20 finish out of that, that can pay off because it gives you upside elsewhere. So I'm going to rank McDowell number 1. Ryan Preece is second simply because he's starting so deep in the pack. I'm not super optimistic about him, but he did have a good finish in the second Pocono race. Chase Briscoe's after that. Cole Custer, at least worth looking at, but if I don't get there in my player pool for this week, it's not going to break my heart. So to me, it's really more about Michael McDowell in the punting tier, maybe some Preece, maybe some Briscoe, maybe some Custer, but not trying to be overexposed to anyone down here due to the capped finishing upside. Let's finish up here at the win picks for this Michigan race. One guy in the salary range above $10,000, one guy below. For the guy above, I cannot go against my simulations. They have Kyle Larson number 1. I think that they're potentially underrating him a bit, so I'll go Kyle Larson as my win pick in the top tier guys. The highest win odds for a guy below $10,000 is someone I didn't discuss too much during the tier by tier breakdown, but that's Ryan Blaney. Didn't discuss him that much because he's starting 3rd, so you kind of need him to win or finish top 5 to pay off for DFS. But I mean, he does have 3.9% win odds in my simulations, 14.4% podium odds. That's not nothing. Had a really good run in the first Michigan race last year. Got wrecked with Keselowski in the second race. So I think he could win. I'm probably not going to be very high on him for DFS. But if I'm just doing win picks here below $10,000, Ryan Blaney would be my pick. So the picks to win for this week, 1 stud and 1 below, Larson and Blaney for Michigan. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, as we send you off now to what should be a fun weekend between UFC, MLB, and hopefully some sweats for PGA as well. Once again, make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, make sure you leave us a rating and review as well. If you have questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. I won't be around too much this weekend. I'm out in Denver for the FanDuel World Fantasy Baseball Championship and then the FanDuel Fan Fest at the Broncos Stadium. So busy this week with FanDuel stuff, but should have time to fill out some lineups later on. So hit me up on Twitter if you have questions. I'll try to get them at some point throughout this weekend. Also, make sure you follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your ML or with your NASCAR DFS lineups. And we'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.